What's going on? Alex here, and today I'm going to talk about the tax implications of forming an LLC in California. Now, California is known to be particularly unfriendly towards businesses, and today we're going to see some of the reasons why, because I'm going to cover the long list of taxes and requirements pertaining to LLCs related to California. Now, before we get started, I want to mention that none of the information presented in this video is legal advice or tax advice. So definitely consult with a qualified attorney and/or tax professional before acting on any of the information presented in this video. With all that out of the way, let's get started. Now, what better way to understand the requirements pertaining to LLCs in California than with a handy-dandy spreadsheet? Let's take a look. So in this spreadsheet, I outlined a lot of the important requirements, and you can see that they're highlighted in bold here. There's quite a few of them. We'll go down the list one by one. Now, as we're going through here, I'm going to mention some of the forms that are applicable to LLCs, and you'll find a lot of them on the California Secretary of State website by using this link here, which I'll include in the video description. And if you go to the site, you'll see that there's various categories laid out here. Limited Liability Companies California is one of them, so you'd click on that, and there are links to the PDF versions of these forms, as well as links to file them online, which makes the process a lot more convenient. So definitely take advantage of that link if you're looking to access some of these forms. Now, the first item we're going to look at is the Articles of Organization. Now, this is the document that essentially forms your LLC at the state level, and you file it with the Secretary of State. Now, if you're working with an attorney to form your LLC, they would typically take care of this step for you. Or if you're working with a company that deals with entity formation that might rhyme with Beagle Boom, they would typically take care of this for you as well. Now, the form itself is called Form LLC 1, and there is a $70 filing fee that goes along with that. So let's take a look at the form. All right, here it is. And this is the Secretary of State Articles of Organization for limited liability companies. Now, the information they're looking for is pretty basic. Essentially, they want the name of the LLC, the business addresses, information regarding service of process, management, and so forth. So nothing really too complex there. And you can actually see what the processing times are at any particular point in the year on the Secretary of State website. So let's take a look at what that looks like. And I'll throw this link in the description for you as well. Now, taking a look, if we open up the Limited Liability Company Filing section, we can see that for formations, it says we are processing requests received via the following methods on the date indicated. Now, for online applications, they're processing ones that were received on the 13th, which was 4 days ago. So there's a 4-day turnaround time there. And in-person applications and the ones received by mail, they're processing the ones from 11/7, which was 10 days ago. Okay, so either 4 days or 10 days, depending on the method of application. So that's the Articles of Organization. It's got a $70 fee. You can keep track of processing times. It's a beautiful thing. Now, once the entity is formed, you can actually check up on it. And the way you do that is as follows. You can Google Business Entity Search CA. All right, you bring that up and you go to New Search. You hit LLC and let's just type in design, for example. And you can see here there's a list of articles of organization that have been filed for LLCs. You have the status of the LLC and so forth. So let's just click on a random one. This is all public information. So let's just click 344 Design LLC since it's active. And you can see some of the information here. You can actually see the documents as well. And this registration document, again, publicly available, will look as follows. All right, so this is the Articles of Organization for this LLC. And when was this filed? May 7th, 1998. Okay, so all publicly available info. It's on the website. So this is a good step to take if you want to verify that your Articles of Organization were actually approved and so forth. This is where you'd find that information. Once you submit the Articles of Organization, check out this website, make sure the registration statement is there, and this brings us to the second item on my spreadsheet, which is the Statement of Information. Now, this is Form LLC 12. There's a $20 filing fee associated with it, and it's due within 90 days of initial registration of the LLC, okay? So this is an important step, and it allows California to have important information related to your LLC, and the Statement of Information is how you provide that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. All right. So this is the Statement of Information of Form LLC 12, and as you can see here, nothing too scary. It does request the limited liability company name, but now it's also asking for the 12-digit Secretary of State file number. And where would you find that number? Well, going back to the Secretary of State website, that's this guy right here. So once you see that your registration statement or articles of organization is listed on the website, you should see that filing number right there at the top left of the listing. So check that out. Don't forget that number. And then it also asks for business addresses, managers or members, service of process information. A lot of this looks really familiar. So even if it's the same as what you filed on your articles of organization, you still need to file the statement of information within 90 days of the initial registration date. So definitely make sure you stay on top of that. And it's also due every 2 years thereafter. So this is a recurring filing that you're going to need to keep track of for your LLC. Every 2 years after that initial registration, you're going to need to file another statement of information. And you should be able to find it on the same website. You'll see that SI complete, and the filing dates for each one of the statements of information that you file. All right. Aside from the statement of information, if nothing's changed, you do have the ability to file a slightly simplified form called a Statement of No Change. And that is Form LLC 12NC. Let's take a look at that. Now, there's also a $20 filing fee associated with that form, but it is a little bit simpler in terms of completing it. And as you can see here, it's quite simplified as compared to the Statement of Information. And it says there has been no change in any of the information contained in the previous Statement of Information. So this allows you to get this out of the way in a bit more of an efficient manner. All right, so the next item we're going to talk about is extremely controversial. Now, this is the $800 minimum annual tax. Now, I've heard some people freak out when they've heard this requirement, and it is real, all right? So if you have an LLC in California, there's a good chance that you're going to owe $800 every year just for the privilege of having an LLC that's formed in or doing business in California. So what are the common ideas that I hear that clients have is, well, I'll just form my entity somewhere else and I can avoid this $800 fee altogether. Wait just a second. Because if you're doing business in California, that $800 fee is still applicable. And one of the things that clients overlook is that the first payment is due 4 months and 15 days after the formation of the entity. So I have some clients that formed an entity, let's say in June, and they figure, oh, well, I'll just take care of it when I file my taxes next April. Well, that doesn't work because by next April, you'll already been late with the first $800 payment, which was going to be due 4 months and 15 days after the formation of the LLC. So let's take a closer look at how that works. Now, the $800 annual minimum tax is generally applicable to LLCs organized in or doing business in the state of California. Very important. Now, it says here domestic LLCs have until the 15th day of the 4th month after they file their articles of organization with the Secretary of State to pay the first year annual tax. And there's an example here. It says, if you filed your articles of organization on June 19th, then your annual tax is due on September 15th. Okay, so 4 months and 15 days later. And the way you can pay the tax very easily is by using the voucher called FTB 3522. So let's take a look at that. And here it is. Very simple. It has just basic information about the LLC's name, Secretary of State file number, FEIN, which we'll go over in a minute, address, and so forth. So you'd include the payment with this form 4 months and 15 days after the date of formation, and you should be all set at least for that year. So this $800 annual tax is one of the unfriendly factors that I mentioned earlier with regard to Californian LLCs, because this is generally applicable every single year. So if you have a little side hustle that you put together and you put an LLC in place, there's a good chance you're subject to $800 right off the bat just for the privilege of existing. So it's one of the highest annual taxes that I know of for LLCs in the States. So it's quite onerous for small businesses to put up with these kind of fees, but you know, it is what it is. So that's something to definitely keep track of. One thing that I see trips up taxpayers all the time is when they forget to pay that first $800 payment, so they end up being subject to penalties and interest. So certainly take care of that in a timely manner and you should be all good. Now, as if $800 annual tax is not enough, get ready for this. Brace yourself. On top of that, your LLC may also be subject to an annual fee, okay? Now, this is the annual LLC fee that may be assessed in addition to the annual LLC tax, okay? and it's structured as follows. Now, hold on to your seat, all right? Let's take a look at the California FTB website here, and it outlines on this page the LLC fee. Now, this fee is based on the gross receipts of the business, not the net income after expenses, but the gross receipts. So if you made a certain number in sales every year, you may be subject to this LLC fee on top of the annual LLC tax. So let's take a look. Now it says if the total California income rounded to the nearest whole dollar is $250,000 to $500,000, then the LLC fee amount is $900. Similarly, if the gross receipts in California are $500,000 to $999,999, then that LLC fee is $2,500. Now again, that's in addition to the $800 annual tax, so the total bill in that case would be as follows. Now, I learned from my CPA exam days to never rely on my internal mental calculations, so with that said, let's do some math. Okay, $3,300 for the privilege of existing as an LLC in California. Now, that's another reason why you will be considered unfriendly to do business here. So, it's important to keep in mind that's applicable to gross receipts, not net income, and the form that you'd use to pay that amount would be FTB 3536. Now let's take a look at that form, and here it is. And it's quite similar to the previous voucher that we looked at for the annual tax, asks for very much the same information, but the due date is different. So let's take a look at that. So the annual LLC fee, if it's applicable, is due by the 15th day of the 6th month of the current tax year. So you essentially have to estimate what you think it might be for the entire year and pay that by the 15th day of the 6th month of the tax year. So if you're using the calendar year, you would want to make sure you pay the annual LLC fee by June 15th. Okay, that's going to be the deadline. So there's two different deadlines. For the annual tax, you're looking at 4 months and 15 days. Okay, so if you're using calendar year, it's April 15th, right? Now, if the annual LLC fee is applicable, if your gross receipts are $250,000 or more, then the due date for that is June 15th. Okay, so it's two separate due dates. It's kind of tricky to keep track of. Your best bet is to just pay both of them on April 15th, just get it out of the way, because I've seen a lot of cases where taxpayers completely forget about the annual LLC fee after they've paid the LLC tax. As you can see, this stuff can get very convoluted very quickly. So if you take care of them both on April 15th, you should be all set, right? Because then you'll be on time for the LLC tax and the LLC fee if that's applicable for you. Now, it's important to keep in mind that if your gross receipts are under $250,000 in California, then the annual LLC fee is not applicable. Okay, it's only if your gross receipts are $250,000 or more.